welcome to Inside the Memorial, the show that looks behind the scenes at the War Memorial, talking with our staff, the inner workings of what makes things happen and what makes things cook here at the War Memorial. For those who are listening for the first time and aren't familiar with who we are a beautiful site located on Lake St. Clair. We offer an awful lot of interesting activities, cultural events. We do weddings, we do memorials, we do jazz events, we do summer concerts, and we honor our veterans here, all situated on Lake St. Clair and beautiful Grosse Pointe Farms. And so come visit us sometimes. If you haven't been here, look on our website for fun activities. And we are anchored by a 114-year-old home. So a beautiful mansion here. So we got it all. It's a really unique space. So today's discussion is about one of my favorite topics, food. And I'm sitting here in the Fred M. Elger kitchen, sitting here with our resident chef, executive chef, Joe Paxton. Brett Pulte, our marketing director's in the background, making things happen and run here. So, Chef Joe, it is a pleasure to have you here. I'm really looking forward to this. Thank you.
Me too. I'm very excited about it. It should be a lot of fun.
We're going to have a lot of fun talking about our favorite topic.
Yes, food.
Food.
It's everybody's favorite topic.
So I have to say the hours are not exciting. You get to work weekends. You get to work nights. Can you tell me, and a lot in the summer when things are really busy and hectic, what brought you to this profession?
It's a long story, actually. When I was a kid, my mom cooked a lot. She was a stay-at-home mom, and she was really good at it. I don't know that her mom was that great at it. She's pretty good, but my mom has spent a lot of time on it. And, when I was little, she'd make chocolate chip cookies with me and cook with me, and that kind of got me started. And then I ended up going to CMU. I failed out of CMU, and I started working at Big Boy. And at Big Boy, I was washing dishes, but if you got all your dishes done, they'd let you go play in the kitchen with them and learn. And so that kind of just sucked me right in. From then on, there was no turning back. I went to culinary school after that, and I've been just cooking. The hours were rough for about 10, 15 years. Thus, third marriage, but we found a spot where it's much better here.
Now, are you from Michigan?
I am.
Yeah.
I was born and raised in Detroit.
Okay.
I was born 5 hours after the Tigers won the pennant in 1984.
Whoa! All right.
Therefore, I'm a giant Tigers fan and Kirk Gibson fan. And,
yeah.
I'm very much from here. I moved to North Carolina for about 5 years to kind of learn more about cooking in a different region of the United States. But I'm born and bred. Royal Oak, Huntington Woods.
Okay, wonderful. And any studying abroad?
A little bit. I went to Paris, Amsterdam, and Austria for about 4 weeks, and I got to cook a little bit there and work on a Mingalitsa hog farm in Austria. Yeah, it was tough work. We didn't realize what we were signing up for quite.
What was that even about?
Well, we went to me and my brother, who's now a hog farmer because of this, went to a charcuterie conference in Traverse City probably 15 years ago. We met these people from Austria, and they said, "We do a Kahlua pig for Easter. You guys should come over." And I'm like, "What's a Kahlua pig?" They inject it with Kahlua and cook it, and they get hammered. And it sounded like a blast. So we decided to go over there. And they're like, "Yeah, you can stay with us if you work." Anyway, it rolled into us, Nick really kind of opening up his own hog farm up north, and we've had the pleasure of using that product quite a bit.
Unbelievable. I see a Kahlua pig roast in the War Memorial's future.
We're going to give it a shot.
We're going to give it a shot. Holy smokes, that's a blast.
Yeah.
No, you and I have talked in the past about The Bear because, I just see that intensity of that show. I remember when the first season, and I watched the first, and I thought, oof, this really is rough. And then it's like, okay, but you're kind of hooked in. It's sort of like a horror movie, kind of want to keep watching. And it's like, this is so intense, but okay. And then you just kind of get hooked, right?
Yeah.
And how much, and we've talked about this before, but how real is that environment in a restaurant since you've had that?
It's very real. Yeah, it's, I love the show. It's a masterclass on human emotion, especially when you start getting into the last season, and the episode with her and her mom when she's pregnant is just stunning. But there's one episode in particular, the family meal episode at the end, or the family episode. And then there was a restaurant where an episode recently that showcased like the monotony of working in a restaurant. I had to step off for a second. It was a little bit too much. When I was a younger cook, I used to have to wake up in the middle of the night and say, "You're not at work. You're at home. You can't put fillets in the oven for a party because you're not at work." And I'd have to say that out loud.
Wow.
And so it kind of gave me, you hate to use the term PTSD with stuff that's not as serious,
but it
a
definitely
little
triggered
bit of a little nightmare there for a minute.
Holy
but I love it.
smokes.
I love the show.
Oh my goodness.
But it's fairly accurate, especially in higher end kitchens where, the pressure is really on to get every minute detail right. When you're charging $150 for a plate, kind of like we are here, everything really, you really want it to be perfect, because you don't want somebody to come back and say, "I spent $150 on this plate. Why is the shallot cut wrong?" So those guys are under an immense amount of pressure every night, and they prep out everything every night.
I wonder if if they always know when critics are coming.
They don't.
So
you never know when critics are coming. I've worked in restaurants mostly for 20 years, and you have no idea. They'll watch out. The Michelin Man has little tells, I'm sure you've seen, but they'll put a fork on the floor and not make a noise about it, and then wait to see if a server notices. They usually come in like two gentlemen or two ladies, and they'll use a different name, and they really won't tell you what's going on. And now, I haven't experienced that because we're in Detroit. We don't have Michelin stars here. But the Beard Award guys will do that as well. And then restaurant critics like Sylvia Rector came a couple times. I think that's her name, right? Sylvia Rector. Came in a couple times from the news to our restaurant. We had no idea who she was until she showed up, and only because somebody recognized her out there. So you really
got it.
Everything's got to be right every day.
So if I want really great service at a high-end restaurant, I just kind of quietly put a fork on the ground.
Yeah, or tell them you're Sylvia Rector.
Don't tell them I'm her. I love that. So let's go to things that you love about cooking. What is your signature dish? What do you love to cook?
So chefs hate that.
Okay.
Right? Now, not all of them, but a lot of us are like, "What's your signature dish?" Well, it's pretty rare that we get to cook what we want.
Yeah,
right? So unless it's at home, so you really don't get to have a signature dish. But so far through my career, the biggest selling dish I've ever had is a whipped feta, which you've had yourself. We used to serve it a little bit differently, but it's incredible. People love it. It's super light and airy. It goes good with hot honey. Well, but I'd say that's, if somebody had to tell me what my signature dish is, that's probably what they'd say.
Okay, so I just didn't want to hear that when you're at home, you open a box of mac and cheese, or do you?
A hamburger helper, beef stroganoff. My wife likes to make taco bake, which is cornbread and taco meat. So we eat, pretty simple humans at home. This is work for me. Yeah. So a lot of times I get detached from eating it. A lot of times I don't want to even taste my stuff here to see if it's good, because it feels like work, and you get through that. But
yeah, definitely.
We eat simply at home. I like pizza. Pizza's probably my favorite.
I love pizza. Yeah. I was looking at buying I'm not going to do it, but a pizza, I think I should do it.
Rock box.
Mm-hmm. Oh.
Yep, that's the one. Rock box is like the
fire
pizza
where
oven.
Yeah,
where you can hook a propane paint to it. My buddy has one, and they're incredible.
So it's where you can get your own fired pizza.
Yeah, if you like a Neapolitan, like I do. Like, you ever had Crispelli's? Crispelli's is my jam right now. It's my favorite pizza because they char it really well and the crust rises. But I like a Neapolitan, and those rock boxes. If you want a margarita, they'll kick them out.
I could probably eat pizza almost every day because you can put so much different stuff, and I love bread, so
it's a problem.
Different things. Yeah, it's a problem.
It's also readily available everywhere.
It's readily available.
It's a hard decision,
Yeah, that's true.
Do we want to cook taco bake and make something healthy, or do we want to just get it baked?
Yeah, right. So thinking about all these appliances that are back here and kind of looking around me, and just, I don't cross the line typically when I come back this way. So it's like, hey, chef, if I need to talk to you, I always get a little, nervous about it. But kitchen disasters. Have you had any you could talk about that?
Yes.
Don't give you maybe won't give our listeners the creeps. I guess it doesn't matter.
Yes, I've had a number of them, but the one that sticks out the most is at a restaurant called 24 Grill in downtown Detroit, and we were cleaning one day. It was a brand new, beautifully opened hotel. The Book Cadillac building.
Yeah.
And we were an independent restaurant in the bottom there, along with Roast when they opened up, which was Michael Simon's restaurant. And so one day we were scrubbing the back wall. We had pulled all the equipment out, and one of the outlets started shooting out flames.
What
I'm
is
like,
it?
that's not good. An outlet, like
outlet.
like a power outlet.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm like, well, that's bad.
That's bad.
That's bad.
Doesn't sound good.
So we went and told the front desk, which is what you're supposed to do in that kind of situation, according to their report at the time. But we said, hey, we think there's a fire. And they're like, nah, you're good. And next thing you know, we're back in there cleaning, and there's smoke. Like 2 feet of smoke under the ceiling. We're like, yeah, we're going to call the fire department. So we call the fire department. The cook that's there with me ran. He said, nope, we never saw him again. He was like, this place is on fire. I'm out. I was thinking the same thing, but instead I went to go get our knives first. Because I'm like, we're not losing our knives. My bag of knives is worth about $5,000. You know, the chefs are all worth more than that. So, and the fire department actually couldn't find the fire. So they walked me back into the kitchen on my hands and knees, holding my neck like a collar, saying, where's the fire?
What?
It's dead serious. And so I pointed to where the fire was. It was under the main gas line to the building, which was glowing red. So our Ansel system went off, which is this thing right here. And when they go off from heat, they shoot powder everywhere to put out the fire. But then you have to go through and clean it all. So it took us 2 weeks to reopen and clean. But
that's a kitchen disaster.
Yeah, it was bad.
Kind of closed for business for a while, folks.
Yeah, and that's not good for a new restaurant. You know, you close down for 2 weeks.
Because we had a kitchen fire.
You know, in 2009, when it's the height of the rise of Detroit fine dining.
Yeah.
You know, so
yeah.
it was a pretty wild
God.
story. Yeah.
That's awful.
Yeah.
So, with all of your experience and thinking of the different places that you've worked, because you've done restaurants, you've done banquet facilities, and probably everything in between.
Clubs, grocery stores, yep.
Yeah. So what gives you a creative outlet to come up with a new dish? Like, have you been tasked with, or do people kind of just tell you this is what it's going to be? Or it's like, no, chef, you give us an idea on what you want, and then how do you come up with that? I guess I don't know that process.
Sure. It's a great question, actually. And it kind of depends on what event we're talking about. I really just rely on my experience. Most chefs that I know in the circles that I work with, and even public chefs, we don't keep secrets, right? If you steal my dish, mockery is flattery, right?
It is, yeah.
So
good to know.
I'm going to tell you any recipe you want to know. I'm never going to hide it from you. So a lot of what I pull is from experience. The whipped feta, I had it one time at a restaurant down south, and I asked them how they made it, and I started making it up here. No worries. Everything's been done before.
Right.
You're just kind of stealing stylized stuff. And so here, with the menus, we get to create them, but we're creating them a year and a half out. Mm-hmm. So that poses a challenge of how do you keep seasonal and trendy when you're working a year and a half out?
Right.
But
because
really,
that's different than what a restaurant would be, right?
Correct. A restaurant, you're making the menu that day.
Okay.
So I'm going to go to the market, I'm going to see what's good, and then I'm going to write my menu. Whereas here, you're kind of just, and it works out well. We do just fine, but it is a different kind of process. But really, I have a giant collection of cookbooks at home. My mom cooks a lot. She's always looking at stuff. My wife's always sending me stuff to be creative. So really, you say, hey, I want to do a salad for a senator. This one, I said, oh, my wife had this dish the other day that was fried goat cheese, and she really likes it. I'm like, let's throw it together. When you've been cooking for 20 years, you kind of know how to do that and make it taste good. So it kind of just comes out of nowhere a lot of times. Yeah.
Fried goat cheese here is to die for.
Yeah,
it's so good.
Immediately, they're like, can you make this for 200 people? And I said, no. It's way too labor intensive.
Really? Yeah, I could imagine that.
Yeah, menu planning is an interesting one.
So at the War Memorial, the wedding couple or the patron, whoever it is, it's a memorial, it's a shower, whoever it is that's selecting the menu, do they ask for deviations? Because I should know this process, but I really don't, to be honest. Okay. I mean, do they like, oh yeah, no, we don't want the, I don't know, XYZ or the chicken this way. Can chef do it that way? Do we allow those types of modification? We do.
We spend quite a bit of time on them, actually. And I think that's a point of pride for us, is that, a bride comes in and they want halal, or they want this dish that they've dreamed up in their head. And so a lot of times that's part of my job, is saying, okay, what does that look like? And then trying to come up with something that works, for us in our system that also makes them happy. But that's kind of the fun part of the job, is them asking for different stuff. Now, it's probably more labor and cost effective for us to do what we do and stick to menu. But
Yeah.
as chefs, we're all used to working in restaurants or had worked in restaurants. And so we miss that creativity a little bit.
Right.
And so when a
Right.
bride comes in or a groom comes in or whoever comes in and asks for something different, it's almost a spark to us. Now, sometimes
It's not.
it gets a little wild, but most of the time we appreciate it, especially if they, have some knowledge on what they want. Because my job is solely to make you happy, right? Like I'm here to give you the best day of your life. I'm going to do whatever I can to make sure that's a perfect plate of food in front of you. We spend a lot of time and training and resources on making sure that plate is clean, hot, and served at the right time. The least we can do is make sure the food's perfect for you.
And I've heard you say that. I'm glad you said it again, that my job is to make you patron, customer, the best experience, because that is really kind of ingrained in your DNA. That's what you're all about. Yeah. And I think, I get a lot of questions like, oh, you don't have your own chef here, do you? Yes, we have our own executive chef here.
Thank
yes,
goodness.
We do. And he handles, takes care of all of it. So that's good for people who are listening to know we have our own executive chef, and his job ingrained in his DNA is to make your experience fantastic, because
and we have a lot of experience with it.
Yeah, because you think about it, when I remember telling other people, when you're planning an event, the biggest thing is the food. Get a place that's got the good food, and there's the band or the music, and the entertainment aspect of it is just as important. But the food usually is up there. That's what people remember.
Yes, it's certainly been a highlight for us, I think, in our reviews is the food, and really it comes down to the way we do it. We're a scratch kitchen. A lot of places, especially the bigger places, will plate your dinner the day before, and they'll reheat it in a rethermalizer, which works for somewhere like that. We don't do that here. And that's really what makes a difference. And what I'd like to get across to the guests is that, part of the reason we want to really know what time and all of these details about your day is so we can fit in and make sure that it's plated right before you get it. So if your wedding's at 7:30, we're plating your dinners at 7:15, and they're going to get to you within, 10 to 15 minutes of us plating them as they go out, compared to a place that is, cooking protein, putting sauce on a plate, mashed potatoes on a plate, and then heating that whole plate up in a machine.
Oh, wow.
The difference is incredible. We
absolutely.
put a lot of care into it. We put a lot of staff into it. We take our time to make sure everything's perfect for them. And we have a lot of experience. Marty's been here for 25 years. Yeah. He's our executive sous chef, and he's a stud. He's a workhorse. Yes, we do some new stuff. Yeah. But, as far as really getting in there and making sure everything's fresh and on point and the timing's right, he's fantastic.
So timing is fascinating, because I think that many don't consider that. And then it's like, well, the food was cold. Well, the speeches ran over by 30 minutes. I don't know. I'm making that up. What are some of the? Are those? Those exactly are really is what it is, or speeches and things like that.
And we work around that. We know that that's going to be the case. We do more weddings than everything else.
Yeah.
So we're really accustomed to how the schedule's going to lay out, how it's going to work out. We have salespeople and our front of the house managers who are absolute professionals at letting us know what's going on, so we can do our job the best.
Good.
And really just kind of paying attention to how the day's going, paying attention to the people. No offense, but are you moving a little slow today? Are you moving a little fast? Do we think we're going to have big talkers at the speeches? And these are some of the things that, brides and groups don't think about when I'm asking a question at the initial meetup. Is like, why are they asking me this? It's so we can really nail this process.
Fascinating.
But
yeah,
that
is fascinating.
It can be challenging, but we've become pretty good at it.
I've heard that at times we've had, doesn't happen very often, but I've heard stories that, the wedding couple didn't even show up until, whatever, some, period of month. I guess that's a clue number one. If they come late to their own reception, the rest of it's not going to go real well, or timely, I should say.
And when they show up, we're waiting on them. We're ready to go, but we're not going to start your plate up until they're here, So
oh my God.
There's no worries there.
Well, I have another question for you. Do you have any cooking hacks that you use in the kitchen that maybe, the rest of us would use as a tip?
Pay attention to what you're doing. Honestly,
Don't cut off your
it's
finger.
something that's important to me, because my chefs taught me that in the beginning. Really just being present with your food. Looking at it, making sure it looks good. You know, when you go to the grocery store and you're like, I don't know if I want this, probably don't do it. You know, when people call me all the time, Nikki will call me and say, hey, you know, is this stuff in my fridge still good? I'm like, if you're asking me, you know, do you want to eat it? Right? So, you know, tips are really just, you know, pay attention to what you're doing. Pay attention to the quality of the ingredients. One of the big ones for us is drying off fish. People don't think about if you put wet fish in a saute pan to sear it, it's going to stick. And then, you know, the whole American idea of putting an amount of time to cook something is outdated and messed up. When my cooks say, how long do I cook these cookies for? I say, till they're done, right? Because the temperature changes in the kitchen, the temperature changes in the oven. You have all these variables. You know, everything that you're cooking was once alive, and so they're all different. And so you really just have to like pay attention to what you're doing, cook it till it's done, take it to a temperature on proteins. But that's my biggest tip, and what we do back here is just think about it. You know, like just don't blindly follow what a recipe says. Use your common sense to figure out what you have and what works for you. But
cook it until it's done.
Yeah,
I love that. Do you typically follow recipes?
We don't really follow recipes, but we have guidelines, right? So I can write a recipe for a quart of sherry vinaigrette, and then my cook comes to me and says, I need to make 14 gallons of this. We have, you know, fractions that kind of work together, so you know you're going to do 2 parts this and 2 parts this, and then a technique behind it. But recipes don't really work out so well in the form that you're accustomed to here.
So when you're home, you're just throwing things together too, probably.
I just sprinkle things in until the ghosts of my ancestors tell me to stop. It's just what you do, right?
The ghosts of your ancestors. I love it.
That's
no,
right.
I'm a recipe follower.
Yeah. That's good.
Unfortunately.
You know, it's important when you're first early on to do that.
No,
and
I've
to learn
been
the
more
techniques.
early on. I'm not early on
Okay.
anymore, Chef. There's no
That's
excuse.
Okay.
Spaghetti
You'll get
sauce. That's the
comfortable.
only thing I can just throw together and do.
Yep.
The rest of it, nope. I'm leveling off the. Well, it's baking
Stop
mostly.
Well, baking's different. Baking, you got to measure stuff.
Okay.
That's science.
Okay.
Cooking is
Cooking. You don't have to.
Yeah.
Oh, I love
There you
that.
go.
That is kind of a spiritual experience, and
It is.
you're present with your food,
Yes, correct.
and you can lose yourself doing all
It's
of it.
ever important.
Oh my gosh. What about, we talked a little bit about kitchen disasters, and this might be the same kind of question for you, but and I think about here, like when I'm working or I come back to see staff when an event's going on, to me, I try to stay away from this area. What are really pressure cooker moments for you guys? Can you think of any in particular that...
Like a particular event or overall?
Either
Overall,
way,
it's that timing. You know, it's like you there's one person that's in charge of making sure that timing is correct, and that's me.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's not right, it's going to ruin the whole day. So we try not to think about that in the moment, you know, like you just know it and you don't hyperfixate on it. But that's the pressure for us, is just, you know, we all really, really want to make sure this day is perfect. And we get up every morning thinking about, okay, somebody else's perfect day today. We got to make it spot on. And that really brings us to it, you know?
So is there a lot of cussing and swearing going on back here? Like,
Yes.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I'm trying my hardest on this podcast not to drop F-bombs all over the place.
Because that's what it is
it
back
comes
here.
out, yep.
And the walls at least are thick enough that they don't hear you on the other side.
Let's
over
hope. I'm sure we would have heard something if they weren't.
I'm sure
but
you would have heard something.
Sometimes during speeches, you have to come back and be like, hey, chef, take it easy. You know? But,
oh my goodness, that's great. So you always wonder, like, does life imitate art or art imitates life?
It's a different world back here. You know, luckily here everybody kind of understands, but it can be a problem at the beginning when you're working with people, because I'm a big guy, we're big guys, we're intimidating, we're always under pressure, we have knives, we have fire, we have alcohol. You come back here and you're like, I really want to talk to these guys, you know? So
probably not. Stay away.
but
now that you put it that way,
we're all happy to talk to you.
Oh my gosh, that is so. I forgot what I was going to say, but probably like intimidating, like aspiring chefs. Do they get? I could see, like, you've got people that work for you. You've had a steady team for a while, but if you work with somebody new, how do you encourage them that? Or maybe discourage them that hey, dude, this isn't right for you.
It's a great question, because a lot of times I'll say to young kids, like, don't do it. you know, and if you think it gets kind of into a sad story, but, you know, for 20 years, I really didn't get a lot of time for my wife, my family, weddings, friends, anything like that. And so I try and explain it to him, like, listen, you really have to love this.
Right.
You know, especially if you want to work in a high-end restaurant, you have to get up every day thinking about it, you know, and you really have to love it, because when you get into those 10-hour days, 6 days a week, that's what's going to pull you through.
Right.
And if you don't have it, then you're going to fade out. But really, for us, we like to find people that have a great attitude, that are ready to show up to work every day and do the work that counts, and we'll teach them the rest.
Yep.
You know, I can teach you how to cook. If you can show up and be ready to learn and eager, the rest is easy.
So if you're like screaming at each other back here, or there's a lot of yelling, or a lot of F this and that, and so on and so forth, at the end of the day, nobody's really taking offense.
Well, that's a management style, right? And it took me a long time to develop, and I'm trying to develop it with my managers. But, you know, we talked about it the other day, Will and I. It's like, well, we could be in the middle of service, and I could say, what the f*** are you doing?
Right.
And really get into him about it, because I need to quickly and effectively communicate that to him. But we both know that at the end of the day, I love him, and we're going to go have a beer.
Yeah.
You know, so you teach these guys to listen to those commands as they come, and not take them personally, right? Like, that's the biggest thing back here. You got to let stuff roll off your back, because I'm probably going to swear at you. I'm probably going to yell at you. And it's just me trying to effectively communicate to you that I need this right now. And that's how I do it. That's my style.
I like you said, I mean, you got a lot of hot stuff back here, and you got hot pots and pans and knives and, you know, combustible things, and you got to shout it out.
It can get interesting with the servers in the front of the house, because they'll come back and they'll hear me say, get the F out of my way. This is hot. We'll say hot corner. And if they don't listen, you really gotta yell at them. You say, you need to get out of my way right now, or I'm going to burn you. And then afterwards, you have to go talk and be like, listen, I love you. You're great. I think you're doing fantastic. But in that moment, I'm going to get you out of my way so you don't get hurt.
Right. Well, you think of, you know, a kid by a fire, by a stove, a hot stove. What do you no, honey, don't, you know, you don't do that. You
now, we don't let them by the hot stove.
But you know what I mean. I mean, you're shouting. If you see a child going into danger, you know, hot, whatever, it's kind of a shout. So,
and that's why it's important for us to socialize afterwards and calm down together and bond, you know, so you really know
I love that.
When it comes that everything's going to be just fine.
Absolutely.
You know? So,
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, interesting, because it is a pressure cooker of a kind of thing. It can be, but the output is fantastic. So, you know, and I'm thinking of, you know, we've talked about food trends and, you know, the organic movement, and one of the things, and maybe you could talk a little bit about it, and just anything sustainable that we're doing here, gluten-free, and just people's just different reactions to food. So I'm just opening it wide up and let you kind of jump in on any of those topics.
It is a big part of our life here with allergies. You know, you have so many of them nowadays, and I completely understand why. And it's really important for us to make sure we can accommodate all of those. But it's really not too bad for us. You know, you can do gluten-free, you can do this stuff. There's a lot more ingredients accessible nowadays for us to serve a gluten-free burger bun or a gluten-free roll. We also are pretty well trained in cooking, so we know how to sub out ingredients. But that has been a big trend lately. One of my real worries in this country is the organic thing. Mm-hmm. Now, organic is really good to do. You should be organic. But getting certified organic for a farm costs a lot of money. So if you're at a farmer's market, I wouldn't really worry about organic. I'd talk to them about what they're doing. And if they're thinking about how they're planting and thinking about what seeds they're using, and not just pulling Monsanto stuff out and just, you know, to get product. But it's hard for a farmer in that point, because you got to choose, like, do I want good stuff or do I want a lot? Right? So a lot's going to get you money. And that's why a lot of people go a lot. You know, they want the Monsanto product because it's productive, but it doesn't taste half as good. And so that's kind of why for a long time we lost a lot of our heirloom produce here in the country, which, to be honest with you, I think for produce, we're incredible compared to the rest of the world. The amount of produce that we had here and now we're starting to bring back is incredible to me. And the organic thing specifically relates because I used to work with this farm down south, and they were certified organic in one state and not in the other. They were on the border. Half their farm was in one, half was in the other. And so the one that wasn't certified organic was turning out better food. And you're like, what's going on? It's because of the bureaucracy of putting them through that program and how they have to work it. It's actually not any better for the food through that specific process than the side that wasn't certified organic, even though the side that wasn't certified was really organic. But he was able to do what he wanted with that, and he was producing better products. So,
well, I heard a podcast not that long ago and talked about the subsidies, farmer subsidies, and really just, I mean, that being bad. Like you just talked about the crops. You want more crops, and then there's subsidies all around that.
Sure.
There aren't necessarily subsidies around producing organically or healthy type food. And
sure.
But anyhow, yeah. So it kind of goes down that whole path, and it's a
wild
slippery
word to explore.
slope.
We could do a whole series of podcasts just on the American food system and how backdated and back-asswards it is.
I know. So I have the pleasure of going to France in a week, and I would imagine they don't put things in their crops like we put in our crops in Europe. I think aren't some of those chemicals and fertilizers banned over there that you know of?
I don't really know about that. I know that they have a different USDA kind of system than we do, and they really honor, pedigree. They have something called DOP. I can't remember what it stands for, but a lot of their products are like certified in that product. They have Brisé chickens, which there's like this whole government organized thing on how to produce the proper Brisé chicken. And in America, we can't eat pork that's cooked under 140 degrees because there was one case of trichinosis in 1897.
Yeah.
So the difference is that the USDA is thinking about how to feed a bunch of people safely, and the France is worried about how to feed a bunch of people safely that taste good.
Mm-hmm.
So I worked at Slows for about 2 years, 15 years ago, and the chef there was gluten intolerant. It was kind of just coming about, and he went to Paris. And he ate bread all day, no problems, because of the way it was prepared, because there wasn't as many products in it, because of the gluten formation and how everything worked over there. He was able to eat it, no problem. Now, if you have a celiac, that's not going to work, right? It's still going to strip your esophagus. But if you're gluten intolerant and you go over there, sometimes you can eat different stuff because it's not produced with the same kind of crap we produce here.
Right.
Their USDA or comparable is not run by Monsanto over there.
Sure.
So can you imagine, here, our whole farming system is run pretty much or you're lobbied by this giant corporation that's just there to make money.
Do you get a lot of customers asking for an organic experience or not necessarily?
No,
nobody?
We don't. And what we say to them, I don't think we've ever actually done a full organic wedding. I don't know that we have the resources to do that. It's from like a broadlining standpoint of who brings us food in. But what we tell them is that we spend a lot of time picking out our food. We have a produce vendor who we know really well, and we know he spends a lot of time in the market picking stuff for us. So he may not be getting all organic, but he's getting all that best stuff, and he's picking and choosing the farms he works with based on his relationships with them and how he knows them, and he's been to most of their fields and knows what they're doing there, or can at least sort through some of the other stuff to get us high quality
So we
stuff.
all source through our farms in the area in Michigan.
We do when available, right? Okay. But you're not going to get an avocado from Michigan, right?
Right.
So,
right. So, all right. So this goes down a whole different path. You get to cook with anybody you want to. Who's your dream collaboration to cook with? Do you have
That's
one?
That's a great question.
I mean,
right? Like I'd love to say I wish I could cook with my grandma, my mom's mom, because she was amazing at making pie dough, like best pie dough I ever had in my life. And my mom teaches me, but it would have been cool to make one with her. But dream collaboration would probably be Marco Pierre White.
Okay.
He trained Gordon Ramsay and Mario Batali, and he's a real ass. There's a couple stories about him training him where Gordon Ramsay complained about being too hot. So he ripped the back of his chef jacket off so he could be aerated in the kitchen.
Oh.
He also didn't like the way they were working together, so made them stand in the corner while he did their job for a whole night.
Oh, my.
But he's an incredible chef. I have most of his cookbooks. His recipes are nuts. And I think it'd be really fun just to have a beer and cook something with him. I'm sure
not under a pressure situation.
Yeah, but there's others. Maddie Matheson, the producer of The Bear, is an incredible chef. He plays Fack on there, and you don't think that when he's doing it, which I love that he's humble, but he's incredible. Like, he's a really good cook. If you watch his videos, the way he handles sorting through the techniques and what you should use and what you shouldn't is very impressive. And so I draw inspiration from him.
No,
as well.
what's the one? Bobby Flay or
Bobby Flay.
Not him.
Bobby
not
Flay.
no. Maybe.
You know, there are like starter level chefs that you get into when you're starting to get into food, and there's nothing wrong with that. You know, one of my first big interests in cooking was from Rachel Ray, and she used this La Crusette pot to make chili, and I'm like, I want to do that. So I bought a La Crusette and I did it. And so everybody talks, you know, mad trash about them, but really, we just want you to be more informed. Mm-hmm. You know, as chefs for the world, we want our customers to be informed so that when I bring you something with gochujang in it, you can be like, oh, that's so cool. He used this Korean ingredient to make this instead of this and that. So anything out there that's getting the world more educated about food and food trends and how it works, we're 100% for it.
So what is the most unique ingredient you've ever used? Was that it? Whatever it was you just said?
No, gochujang. Gochujang we use all the time. It's a fermented Korean red pepper paste.
Okay,
it's kind
I
of
should
like,
probably know that. That's probably common.
It's like tomato paste.
There's so many things that I don't know. You all are teaching me.
Getting the servers to say gochujang is a wild endeavor. Craziest ingredient I've ever worked with. That's tough. That can get real dark real quick. We at that charcuterie conference, we got to slaughter a pig. We got to use an ethical process to do it. We left, you know, we can get into the details later, but right after they had us taste part of the gland to see if the pig was sick and if it's okay to eat or not. And that was one of the most interesting things I've ever worked with. But also on the inside of the pig, inside of the rib cage, is this layer of lard. And it's called leaf lard. And it's kind of a peculiar density, and you can make puff pastry with it. So I don't know if you're familiar with puff pastry. You layer in the fat. Well, this is kind of already laid out for you. And so we got to make puff pastry with that, and that was incredible.
That's crazy.
Fresh
Isn't what's his face? Emerald Lagasse was always more lard, right?
Yeah, right? I do like Emerald. He's a good one. But yeah, that was a crazy one. I love working with foie gras. I'm sure you're familiar with that one.
That sounds kind of
disturbing
pretty unethical.
To me. Yeah. You shove a pipe down a duck's throat and feed it 9 pounds of grain every day. It's not great, but I tell you what, the taste of it.
It tastes really good. Oh my God.
Wheat licoche is a new one I've used. It's a corn fungus.
Corn
so
fungus.
if the corn grows in the right way, this fungus grows out of it, and it's a mushroom. They call it corn truffle, and it has a really beautiful flavor to it.
So what immediately comes to mind when you say that is what makes people want to taste some of this stuff? Like, okay, I'm going to like just go and eat that thing growing off of corn. That
I don't know. I don't know who's out there like, we should eat this. You know, there's
someone who's really hungry.
Chefs that are using insects and stuff like that. And I can't get down with that, but it's pretty wild. There's somebody out there like, should we eat this or not? You know, like who tried the first mushroom? You're like, I want to eat that.
Exactly.
Yeah. He's dead. Don't eat that one. So,
or he's off there tripping. Maybe,
right?
maybe try that one.
Yeah, definitely.
Just don't cook while you're using it. Oh my God! Is there anything? I feel like I've asked you like everything I could think of. Is there anything that I haven't asked, or anything you want people to know?
You know, I think we want to get out without being too cocky to people that, you know, we have a lot of experience back here. You know, I've worked for 20 years. I've staged in New Orleans. I've staged in France. I've staged in Portland, Maine. You know, I've worked for some great chefs. I staged here in Grosse Pointe when Garrett Lepar was at Murray. I was there for 4 weeks. Marty's been here for 25 years. He's also worked at some great restaurants. Will's been to some great restaurants. Anthony comes from some cool heritage. So, you know, when people come here and they think, I want this and that, a lot of times it's good to ask us what we think is best and let us kind of do our craft here. And so what I'd like people to know when they come here is that we're ready for this. We've been doing this forever, and we're here to make your day special, and we hope that you let us, you know, because this is what we love to do. We've gotten all this experience because we love to do it, and I just want to bring it to your day. You know, that's all we're here to do. So whatever we can do to help them out, you know.
I love it. I love it, Jeff.
Yeah.
Well, with that, I think we can wrap up.
Okay.
I thank you so much. It has been so fun. I didn't get too personal or
no,
dig too
not
much.
at all.
I think I was okay.
You did great.
Only a couple F-bombs, not
Yeah,
too bad.
Just a couple.
Didn't come from me.
Right?
Just want y'all to know.
That's what you get. You wanted to do a
But
podcast
I
with the
could-
chef. He's going to drop an F-bomb on you.
I'm glad you did. I want to see it raw and unedited.
You
So
got it.
it has been a pleasure working with
thank you
you.
so much.
I'm honored to be working alongside the staff. This is an amazing staff, and as Chef said it himself, the team that he gets to work with is an incredible, talented team. The output, just judge for yourself. I get compliments all the time, and just today we had a fantastic lunch that you put together for a few very VIPs that came here.
It
So
was fun.
I thank you. I thank you and your team. I thank Brett for running the show back there.
Brett.
And I thank all of you for tuning in. I hope you picked up a couple nuggets, no pun intended, but maybe a little bit with today's episode. And as always, please visit warmemorial.org for fun events that you can come and partake in, and catch us on social media. If you like this podcast, certainly, give it a thumbs up, add a comment, and tune in next time to
Y'all
Inside
come
the
eat.
Memorial. Yeah, indeed. Y'all come eat.